All right, let's rock and roll. All right, I'd like to call a meeting of Budget and Finance to order. Any discussion from my fellow legislators? Hearing none, I will move on. We have a presentation tonight from the Smart Watt Energy Service Group.
Thank you.
Sure.
Let's just present from here, is that fine?
Sure.
Okay. So everybody should have a handout. Basically, this is going to be a recap of kind of where we're at in the process and really just a look at the final project. I think you all know us, but just to reintroduce, my name is Greg Royer. I'm a account executive with SmartWatt. And then Bill Clark is a project director who is responsible for putting the final project together. So if you turn to page 2, I'm just going to go over a quick agenda. And actually, before we get into that, I want to thank Paul and your staff and also the administration. You guys were very accommodating and helped this process go a lot smoother. So thank you. So we're going to talk quickly about the investment grade audit. That's what IGA stands for. What was involved in that, the facility improvement measures that we're proposing for the county, project financials, next steps, and then questions and answers. But if you have any questions, just feel free to jump in. Keep this kind of informal. Page 3 is a kind of a timeline of where we're at in the process. So initially we started this back, it's probably been over a year ago, so close to around this time last year, where we presented the preliminary feasibility assessment, and the board wanted to proceed with the next steps. So there was a resolution to move to an investment grade audit, which is what we're going to present to you in this. And then once the investment grade audit is accepted by the board, we get the financing in place and go to construction, which is about an 8-month, duration. Next page, just some primary goals of the investment grade audit as we were going through. The study was to, achieve significant energy and maintenance cost savings, as well as water savings. Probably the biggest item was to replace all the antiquated equipment with new high-performing equipment with new warranties, a new life expectancy, because a lot of the equipment we found as we were going through the investment grade audit was at the end of useful life. So, whereas you would typically do float a bond to upgrade your infrastructure, this is, was an attractive way to get a lot of that, capture a lot of those projects. I think another big item is the windows at the courthouse. So we're going to be replacing a large portion of windows. The old historic windows that are on the registry are included in this project. Yes.
Which courthouse? Just the one next door? Okay.
Yeah. On the courtroom side predominantly.
Okay, thanks.
And of course, another factor was trying to achieve as much incentive rebate through the utility as possible through the process. If we go to the next page, this one actually doesn't have a number, but this is just kind of a flow chart of the major milestones in the IGA process. So data collection, site visits, which include bringing out design engineers, specialty contractors. Through this process, on every facility improvement measure that SmartWatt's not going to be performing, we went out and got 3 bids, from contractors, so we tried to keep the pricing as tight as possible through the process. And then the IGA report development. One thing I want to point out here is we had several FIM workshops, we call them, with Paul and the maintenance staff, where we go through all the list of things that we found and we kind of whittle down what projects make the most sense, and then from there, finalize the report and final proposal.
And there was attention paid there to buildings that are going to be repurposed. For example, at the annex, if it was a 15-year payback, then it doesn't make sense to do those measures. So those things kind of dropped out of the scope, and it was an iterative process that we went through.
So obviously, there's, different components that went into this, but this just kind of gives you an idea of, what went into the process. If we go to the next page, page 6, just a summary of the buildings that are included in this project. We've got all your major buildings and what the associated square footage is. So from there, I'm going to turn it over to Bill because he's going to talk to you about some savings numbers and what exactly is in the final scope.
Thank you, Greg. And again, I'd like to thank Paul and all his staff for numerous visits out here, and they were very accommodating. So we've been on every roof and every boiler room and every bathroom in the county. But just to recap, right now you're spending about $568,000 a year in energy and water costs. And this project would save about $190,000. So it's interesting, why we include water in this. Water makes up about a third of your utility costs. And we just finished the project over at Fulton County, where we actually reduced their water consumption by 60%. So for this project, we're looking at a 23% reduction in electric costs, 12% in gas, and 31% in water. So pretty significant costs across all those areas. The next page, page 8, is just a list of all the different items that made it into the project. We've delivered this document. This is actually the investment grade audit report. It has all the cut sheets and designs and things like that, and gone over this in great detail with Paul and his staff. So this is just kind of a summary of that document. But these are the measures that are included, and I'll just kind of hit the highlights here. The building automation systems, you have a Johnson Controls Medisys system throughout most of the county buildings. We won't be changing that platform. What we will be doing is that we add new equipment, be updating the controllers so that they can be retrofitted with new equipment. So your current controllers are they're not back-gen compatible. So we'll be putting in new controllers that are, so that as you replace equipment over time, you'll just be able to plug right into those controllers as well. But we will be doing some things like scheduling changes and optimal start-stop, some small changes. We've worked very closely with Johnson Controls on the project to get the scope from them and include them in the process. We'll be looking at replacing a couple of boilers at the old courthouse, the new courthouse, and a furnace in the B&G workshop. And those will be Patterson-Kelly boilers that are going in there, condensing, so we're getting an increase of efficiency from about 80 to 93%. And those new units will integrate in with the Johnson control system as well. Domestic hot water replacements, picture page 11. You look at that picture, the one on the left is an old domestic hot water heater that's been failed for quite a while. You see the puddle of water on the floor right next to it. We'll be replacing that unit and putting in condensing domestic hot water heaters. The other two units, which are Patterson-Kelly thermifics, will stay in place as backups. So we'll be in with code on the jail boiler water as well. But we'll increase the efficiency there from about 82 to 94%. Building envelope improvements, door seals, ceiling windows, cracks in the building, things like that. That's kind of low-hanging fruit stuff that always makes sense. New cooling system in the new courthouse. So on that side of the building, I believe that's called Court Street right there, right? Where all those window AC units are that go through the front, we'll be taking all of those out. Those will be bricked in, and we're going to put in something called a variable refrigerant system. We also got some matching fronts from the unified court system as well to help pay for that.
Is that a geothermal or what is
No, it's not a geothermal system. It's kind of like a heat pump system. Yeah. And so the other thing that it will do, I know that building has some comfort issues heating-wise. It'll also augment the heat in that building. It's called a variable refrigerant flow system. So a little different from a heat pump in that it's got separate condensers and evaporators, but the units kind of look like council heat pump units. And then lighting system upgrades, we'll be putting in LED lighting throughout the county. for the buildings that it made sense and that the payback was good, where you know that you're going to be in those buildings for some period of time. As well as doing occupancy sensors and photo cells and things like that. The big item here, so on page 15, this is a picture of the Gloversville Library, with the left being the before and the right being the after. So these were actual windows that are done by the company that we chose to do this, which is called B.R. Johnson. They specialize in doing historic window preservation. And so we'll go through the SHPO process with that company as well. And that'll increase the R value. You know, the payback on windows is not great, but all the other savings in the project allowed us to get these windows done. And we also got some money from the Unified Court System as well for that, got a matching grant. And then over at the old courthouse, rather than replace the windows, we could get the same savings by basically putting in, they're kind of like storms that go on the inside, but they're custom-made storms to fit right into those openings. You know, very, very attractive. So that's a picture on the bottom there of a post job there with the storms inside. Some other things that we're doing: variable frequency drive, water conservation. So at the jail, we'll be putting in what are called icon flush valves that limit the number of times that a prisoner can flush their toilet. And there's a water savings there, but it's also a flood prevention as well. So the prisoners will sit there; they have nothing else to do. So they'll just keep hitting the button and flush their jump seats or their jumpsuits or their sheets down there. If anybody's ever worked at a prison, you know what an issue this is that the toilet overflows and you got to go in and wrestle with a prisoner on a wet floor. And there's a fair bit of water savings that comes from that. Transformers for units that were low efficiency. And that's kind of it in a nutshell in the FIMs that are in the project. Are there any questions? Thank you.
And just to conclude, talk about the financing and next steps a little bit. So if you go to page 18, by law, this has to create a positive cash flow. And that's guaranteed by SmartWatt. The difference, if there's any negative difference, that's reimbursed, via payment by SmartWatt. The incentives paid by National Grid are guaranteed as well by SmartWatt. So if we miss the mark on those, again, we eat that difference. One thing I will say is we have submitted all applications through National Grid, and they've already earmarked the incentive portion for the project. So as we reach the end of the year, a lot of times what happens is that money dries up and it becomes unavailable. But the good thing is we've already got it teed up, so we're good in that aspect. It's going to be a 15-year finance term, and again, we really tried to maximize capital deferment. So pieces of equipment that are at the end of useful life, tried to capture as much of that as possible in this project. If we go to the next page, we've got the financials laid out. The first set of numbers is your total project investment, and then your utility incentive, and then also the Unified Court reimbursement, which gives you a finance total of the 2.1, and that's going to be an interest rate of right around 3.25. We have been working with a company called Real Lease. They've done over $1 billion in financing for these types of projects. They're very familiar. I think they've actually worked with the county on some other projects, maybe some heavy equipment and things like that. But they're a very trusted partner in the industry, so they've been running some cash flows and things. And we do have a sample on the next page of what the cash flow looks like. So we provided this just so you can kind of get a feel for for how the project flows. But basically over the a 20-year period, although we're financing for 15, but just to show you on 20 years, it creates a $1 million positive, $1 million plus positive cash flow. And when you look at the useful life of most of the equipment, you're looking at 25, 35, 50 years, depending on what specific item it is. So, this is going to be a project that continues to pay for itself down the road.
excuse me, why is an electric rate reduction over zero after 6 years?
It's hard to know what's going to happen with electric rates, so that was to be conservative. Does that make sense?
Instead of claiming it for the full 50-year term,
Right.
we cut it off after 5 to have more of a.
Your actual savings will likely go out for the 20 years, but for this purpose, to be conservative.
It's just hard to see it go from 65,000 to zero.
Yeah, and this isn't, I mean, this is, affects the cash flow negatively. So obviously internally, if you wanted to keep that factor in place, that's, certainly an option. Any more questions on the cash?
Well, not the cash flow, but for your heating and cooling, are you going to have like set points in each building? Because obviously that'll affect the cost of heating and cooling.
Yep. Yeah, and Bill, if you want to.
Sure, and there is a section in this report that Paul and I went over what all those set points are. So there's a schedule for each of the buildings. It's not that different than what you're doing now, with the exception of a little bit more night setback. So there were a couple of buildings that what we did was we went around and we looked at the Johnson Controls medicine system to see what it was doing, but we also went around and put in temperature loggers in all the buildings. So you probably, if you work in a county building, you probably saw them, the little guys that about the size of a cigarette lighter. And so we took all that temperature data to see what was actually happening in the building. And then so those buildings that didn't have setback, the fixes go in the control system and put in a setback. But the daytime temperature, not a large change. And and that's and I like to be conservative with these cost estimates too. And the reason for that is that you can't control human behavior, So, well, you can't totally control human behavior. So, we could say, you ought to put in a 76-degree cooling set point. Well, some people are very hot at 76 degrees. So it's so you want to be conservative when you do those kind of things, would be my opinion.
And
So certainly you could get more aggressive and realize more savings.
well, I was just wondering, when you took the tour of the buildings, did you find, like other things, for example, the amount of coffee pots and microwaves and the high energy use on those?
Right.
Did you?
I didn't really look at all the different plug loads that were attached. And, the copiers have kind of taken care of themselves over time.
Right.
But certainly, the use of the microwaves and things like that, you can get, Energy Star rated equipment and things like that.
Okay.
And same with PCs. Most Windows-based PCs have a lot of that load management software built into it.
Okay.
So that would be a matter of, the IT department potentially putting a more aggressive schedule in place to realize some more savings. If we go to the last page, page 21, just want to talk to you real quick about next steps. So obviously, the board would need to make a final resolution to proceed with, the final investment grade audit, and then sign the National Grid Implementation Project Statement, which we have been, National Grid, SmartWatt, Megan and Paul have been kind of working a little bit to get that document finalized. So we've already started the process on that. Once that's finalized, we can go ahead and execute financing. There will probably be a 2 to 3 week period between contract execution and closing on the financing. But we've already teed up, the leasing company, and certainly if the county, has a preference to go with somebody else, we can certainly, we're not married to this leasing company. If there's somebody you really want to work with, that's fine with us. So we'll, work with you on that process.
I would say the one advantage that they do have is that they're competing for these loans. So
Right,
they're
right.
running a competition for the loans.
Yeah, so they're going to be going out to like Bank of America, First Niagara, other banks like that, and whoever comes back with the best not only the best rate, but the best terms and fees and things associated. That's, they'll present that back to the county and say, here's what we came up with, and ultimately it's your decision, but, their job is to work and review it. And, once closing happens, we start ordering material. We have a kickoff meeting with Paul and his staff. Our project management team comes in and basically starts building schedules, figuring out, what material is going to go where. We get all that in place, and then construction begins. And once construction begins, we're looking at about an 8-month, installation period. Once, the project's substantially complete, we bring in our staff to do full training. A lot of the equipment, we're going to have factory reps come in and actually do factory training on the efficiency boilers, for instance, and some of the control systems and things like that. And then from there, it's just ongoing support. Whatever you need us for, we're here to support you.
Are you going to try to tackle one building at a time? Or-
Usually it's kind of by trade typically. So
Yeah.
the lighting guys would come out, and obviously they're going to hit one building at a time. But some of these things have a seasonality to them too.
Okay.
For example, the boilers used for space heating,
Right.
obviously we don't want to hit those in February during the
Right.
coldest part of the year. And the same with air conditioning and that type of thing. So a great time to do the VRF would be about the April timeframe, be kind of in between the heating and the cooling season.
Right.
And depending on timing, there can be cases where on certain trades, maybe they've got larger crews available where they'll break them up into teams and tackle 2 buildings at a time. So that's, logistical stuff we'll work out as we get the schedule in place.
Gary?
Oh,
Does Smart Watt make any of the equipment?
We're not a manufacturer,
So actually all you're doing is you're a contractor basically, or
yeah, I guess we're a couple different things. We're almost like a construction manager, but we also do a lot of the electrical installation. We've got a crew of about 110 electricians, so a lot of that we'll tackle in-house, which keeps those electrical install costs down.
anyone else? I think it sounds good. Very good.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
And Bill and I's contact information is on the very last page, so if anybody has questions, please feel free to reach out.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.